Cheers, a professor at George Washington University. We have a lot to talk about.
Yes, thank you.
We heard just a short time ago that some of the victims' family members told the suspect in that hearing that they forgave him. Talk to us a little bit about Charleston, South Carolina. It's in America's deep South. This church is located on a street that is named after a pre-Civil War supporter of slavery. Do you think there's been any progress at all in the United States regarding race relations?
Well, first, thank you for having me, and it's an excellent question. It's a very loaded question. I honestly used to believe that we had come far, in particular when President Obama was elected in 2008. I remember my grandmother, who is now close to 90, but saying that she never thought she would see that in her lifetime, an opportunity for an African-American man to become president. And we were all optimistic. And that optimism quickly faded in the wake of some pretty heinous and fairly blatant racism and racist acts that have occurred. Charleston I've been to Charleston many times. It's a very beautiful city, for one, and this violence that has marred the community is ultra tragic. Race relations, I believe, were getting to a really good place, and I think, unfortunately, as a result of a number of instances and reasons, going back to the large gap between wealthy and not wealthy, rich and poor, and a lot of the instances that we've seen over the last, I'd say 24 months in particular, with violence against African Americans, we have a long way to go.
South Carolina, we still see the Confederate flag on the grounds of the State House in Columbia.
Yeah.
What kind of message do you think it sends by being there? It was just taken down a little more than a decade ago, but it still flies.
It still flies, and it flies proudly, which I go back and forth on whether it's heritage or is it hate. Can it be both? Is it not one and the same? I do believe that with the governor lowering the flag to half staff, as she definitely should have done for the next 9 days, honoring the 9 victims of Wednesday night's tragedy. But the question still remains, why is that flag hanging and flying so proudly? I think it sends very clear messages, in particular to potentially young, frustrated. There's a population of very young and angry men, in particular white men, who see some of their unfortunes in their life as a result of blacks, immigrants, other minorities who have come to this country for the hopes of prosperity. And there's been this growing surge in these statements of we need to take back our country. And I constantly wonder, when I hear that, who are you taking back your country from exactly? And what does that mean? And those sentiments, as there's constantly being thrown out, is causing divide. There is a divide between you who belong here and you who don't. And it's that sort of rhetoric that I believe sits in the minds of individuals that I don't believe they're mentally ill. I do believe that there can be something just called hatred and evil, and that can stand on its own without giving a title of mental illness. And it's really disturbing to see someone who would come into a house of worship and prayer and murder innocent people.
I want to mention quickly that one of the victims in that church attack, the pastor is also a state senator, went for many years, served his state, going into that state house where that flag still flies. Black churches have long been targets by hate groups. How would you compare this, or can you even compare it to what we see around the world with mosques being blown up, synagogues, not just Christian churches, but this is something that happens in the United States, but other parts of the world as well?
It definitely does. I mean, Christians are constantly on the attack, unfortunately, as you mentioned, churches, synagogues, temples and mosques and other places. There seems to be this issue, though, in the United States in particular. There is a strong and long history of acts of terrorism against Black churches. In particular, we can go back to the 16th Street Baptist Church when 4 little girls were killed in the 1960s. And I think it's something that this unfortunately is not new. It should be something that we are moving past, but this, as you mentioned, this is happening all over the world. People go to places of solace where they should feel safe, where they can and be in prayer with their God, and to know that people will then, or some individuals want to take that time when they're at their most vulnerable to attack and harm. I think it sends a very clear message of terrorism, very clear message of terrorism, and in particular here, it was domestic terrorism, in my opinion.
All right, Imani, cheers. As always, we appreciate your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your time.